Hello, and welcome from me, and I hope you're enjoying your Fire Buyer Live conference. My name is Steve Hamm. I'm the Chief Executive of the Institution of Fire Engineers, a professional body for the fire industry, as I'm sure many of you will be aware, and some of you may even be members of our institution. My presentation at the event now is around managing fire safety in a sustainable world. Now, this particular topic is something that I think is gaining traction in the fire industry as the industry attempts to come to grips really with what I would describe as the implications from a fire safety perspective of the very broad global agenda on sustainability for all of the reasons I'm sure that we're well aware. So fire safety has some challenges to confront over the coming decades, probably, and there are some immediate challenges that demand our attention now, and all of these are consequences really, and new challenges that are presented to us as a result of this broader sustainability agenda, which I'm sure we all understand. So what I'll do in this presentation is run through what those challenges look like, give a few examples really of where we are with these sort of immediate challenges and work that is being done by practitioners and indeed by professional bodies such as the IFE, and then look perhaps a little bit longer term about what the role is of a professional body to ensure that the practitioners in fire safety globally are able to meet the challenges that are presented by sustainability challenges. So with that in mind then, what actually is the challenge? You know, what's different now in this sustainable world that perhaps wasn't present, 5, 10, even maybe 1 or 2 years ago? And this slide really just puts 3 examples. These aren't exhaustive, but this is 3 examples. When we look at fire safety in a sustainable world, whether it's about the way in which we use energy or the way as a society in which we try to control emissions, the construction industry, so the built environment we're talking about here, in this example, the construction industry can have a huge impact. And that ranges from construction materials that are used in building construction, right through to sort of insulation properties of buildings, heating, ventilation systems, that type of thing, which all buildings need, and have been done in a way for many years that is now potentially or will change in the future when alternative methods, alternative materials and practices come into play in building management as a result of wider sustainability agendas. And I'm sure we're all aware and we can all understand alternative fuels, and we can all understand alternative construction materials, timber being one of those. So those are just a couple of sort of high level examples. So the emerging technology, the first bullet point there, is running at pace. So the choice is available, just if we focus on the built environment at the moment, the choice is available for how the built environment is constructed, what it looks like, what life cycles look like going forward, the materials that are used. That is progressing at pace as a result of demands really from the construction sector that materials and processes and building outcomes are fit for purpose. And of course, legislation changes at a pace as well, not necessarily at the same pace, but the legislative controls over fire safety by definition will need to change and keep pace. So that's the first challenge, really. Just that's not uncommon in the world. It's present in many ways that we need to keep pace with emerging technology, and the legislation itself, where it's required to regulate fire safety, keeps pace with this. The second bullet point is all about building regulations, really, and what the art of the possible is for design engineers, back really even through to architects in the first instance, with the concept of a building. So the built environment, there are all kinds of expectations now about the role that the built environment plays in society, and it's not just about construction materials anymore. It's also about the whole package of a building. And the final one is probably the most important of the three challenge bullet points that I'm talking about here. And that is about integrated approaches to engineering all of this. Now, of course, engineering disciplines talk to each other and always have done. That's par for the course. But it's really, really more important now, I think, than ever, that fire engineering, a discipline in its own right, sits alongside and talks to structural engineering, for example, building services engineering, for example, all engineering disciplines in their own right, but the need for integration and mutual understanding across those boundaries is more important now than ever. So that's just two or three challenges there that face us at the sort of high macro level, strategic level. Before I move on from this slide, I just want to touch on the illustration there, which is a vehicle. So I've talked so far about buildings, but that illustration speaks for itself. That is a vehicle, electrically powered, on charge, inside a building. So that's slightly different. What we're doing there is refueling, effectively, with stored energy, our vehicle inside a building, potentially inside a building underneath potentially residential buildings where people are asleep. Now, of course, that's a huge contrast if we stop and think about that in terms of how we conventionally refuel our vehicles with fossil fuels. We keep that stored energy in a very safe and regulated environment under the ground, extracted by pumps, in a place that is a safe space outdoors. So recharging our energy for our vehicles is transformed through the use of electric vehicle technology, all for the greater good. I think we can all see and understand the direction of travel of, for example, the electric vehicle industry. But what does it mean for fire safety? It means we're refueling our vehicles, albeit with electricity and not petrol, diesel, but we're refueling them inside buildings. There's still a lot of stored energy there, so there's going to be some fire safety considerations. Now, moving on from those points, sustainability initiatives, that first bullet point there, revolve around finding alternatives. So if we go back to construction, for example, steel and concrete has dominated construction for many, many decades now. A move away from that for very, very important reasons in terms of the broader sustainability agenda mean that alternative materials are being sought. And one of those, of course, is timber. So mass timber construction is an example of where new requirements for building materials and choices of building materials are bringing timber into the construction sector. Now, timber's always been in the construction sector, we know that. But when we talk about mass timber, we're talking about areas of building construction, for example, beams, columns, and pieces of the construction that actually are integral to the structural stability of a building. Now, timber, in terms of fire, clearly has a different set of characteristics than steel or concrete. Now, the IFE is very, very keen, I think, to get across the message that this is not an insurmountable challenge. It's a technical challenge that needs to be met by fire professionals to ensure that mass timber can be used in a safe way in buildings. Of course, there'll be varying opinions about what a safe and acceptable usage of mass timber is in buildings, but we need to be cognizant, I think, as a fire profession, that the use of mass timber is something that we're going to see more of going forward. And it's incumbent upon us, for society's benefit, really, as fire engineers, to determine how mass timber can be used in a productive and equally safe way in building construction. And likewise, electric vehicles. So we touched on the earlier slide around electric vehicles being used more and more. Now, that example was a sort of family car type example, but we're starting to see now the emergence of commercial level electric vehicles, passenger transport, buses, for example. It's not uncommon now to see public service transport vehicles powered solely by battery power, by EV power. And how long is it into the future? I would suggest not too long, until we see commercial transport operations, lorries as we would see them now, on the highway, perhaps with significant implications for battery storage, charging, and the actual physical construction of prime movers for moving transport around the country. And then a final one there is alternative fuels for public transport in general. So things like trains, for example. At the moment, that's all about electricity or diesel power sometimes. But what about the future when we're looking at alternative fuels for public transport? There's alternative fuels being researched for the aviation sector. There's alternative fuels being researched, as I just mentioned, for the rail sector. All of which, clearly, if they're fuels, they're stored energy. So it just changes the parameters of the fire safety equation around these alternative fuels. And then coming at it from a slightly different perspective in terms of identifying the challenge here, just think about solar panels. These are not uncommon now. Most of you will be familiar with the concept of solar panels, where we're taking energy. Again, it's all about energy from solar emissions and converting those into electrical power. What are the fire safety challenges with those solar panels? I'm not going to try and answer that question now in its entirety, but there are a few fire safety challenges that immediately spring to mind, not least of which is about the emergency response to events involving solar panels, because they're not an electrical circuit that can be isolated in the normal way. So this isn't just about design, this is also about emergency response as well. So all of these aspects of change that are driven by sustainability present a number of challenges from a number of perspectives. So whether you're in the emergency response field that's having to deal with these issues when fires do occur, whether you're in the sort of passive or active systems environment with buildings and the built environment, these challenges in one way, shape or form will cut across all of those aspects of fire engineering. So this one now just sort of gives us an example of a situation where we had a fire. This was in the United States, and you can see the headline in the media there, 6,000 gallons of water to extinguish what is effectively a vehicle fire, a car fire. There's a couple of questions there, just by way of example. So on the one hand, we could accept the fact that the norm going forward is that you need 6,000 gallons of water potentially to extinguish a vehicle fire on the side of the motorway or whatever it happens to be. Well, that if I'm not suggesting it is, but if that's the scenario, that raises a whole load of questions about the emergency response capability around where we get 6,000 gallons of water from at the top of a hill on a motorway and get it deployed to deal with a vehicle fire. Conversely, we can look at that as a situation that exists now that we want to improve, so that we don't need 6,000 gallons of water, which means we probably need to look at different ways of dealing with electric vehicle fires and understanding the mechanisms of thermal runaway, etc., within fuel cells. So whichever end of that spectrum you choose to put yourself, the one thing that is absolutely certain is it means change. So if we do accept that 6,000 gallons, then where are we going to get the 6,000 gallons from? That means a whole rethink of predetermined attendances for the fire and rescue service. If, on the other hand, we think that's not sustainable and that's not the way, there must be a better way, then it means there's a need for some research and development and product development to facilitate the emergency response with the tools that they need to deal with that situation. So one way or another, just using electric vehicle car fires as an example, I think we can see there's two steps to this. The first step is, what do we accept as the assumption going forward? Are we happy with 6,000 gallons, or do we need to find another way of dealing with these sorts of things? And in either case, what's it going to mean for us going forward? And the one thing I think is absolutely crystal clear is things aren't going to be the same as they are perhaps today or yesterday. So smart solutions, it says there as a title, and it is. We need to be smart about this, and we collectively in the fire engineering profession, we do need to think about best practice for dealing with situations and scenarios. And this is a relatively straightforward car fire we're talking about here. What does it mean for mass timber volumetric construction using timber, for example? So the best practice needs to be identified, and none of this, I think, is going to happen in isolation. This is all about collaboration to understand these emerging technologies and how to create solutions to deal with fires when they occur, or prevent fires, or mitigating the impact of fire when they occur. So two key things there, really. There's got to be some thinking about new ways of doing things, because as we've just discussed with this car example, the world is changing, the scenario is changing, the planning assumption needs to change. But also, this can't be done in isolation. Fire and Rescue Service cannot deal with this in isolation. The IFE can't deal with this in isolation. Any of you in the audience probably can't deal with this in isolation. Collaboration is the solution to the methodology to address these issues. So just the remaining part of this presentation really is just to look at, well, what are we going to do about this then? What's the Institution of Fire Engineers doing about this? So there's some examples there of what we've done so far, and it states our aim there that we'd like to really become the centre's sort of centre of excellence, really, for understanding how to manage fire safety in a sustainable world. And these are some very early initiatives that we've taken. So we do now have a dedicated in-house alternative fuels coordinator, and that is all about alternative fuels, clearly, and coordinating really just the emerging pictures that are coming into us as an international body, as the IFE is, from around the globe, about what does alternative fuels mean in Western Europe, North America, Australasia, the Far East, those types of things. It's a common issue, of course, but the problems and the issues with it are manifesting themselves and challenges are manifesting themselves in different ways. We've got an electric vehicle and emerging technologies working group with the aim of commencing to bring together a sort of technical hub, a reference point for these various challenges, and just cataloguing the challenges is where we are at the moment. I think solutions is further down the road, and like I said earlier, we cannot do this in isolation. As a professional body, we're facilitating here rather than coming up with all the answers, as you would expect. And what we have also done is the bullet point there talks about, we've refined our CPD agenda. So we, as a professional body, we expect our members in practice to keep up to date through CPD, as you would expect, in common with any engineering discipline. But we've really made some inroads, really, to put in an emphasis on there to include sustainability related fire safety, and indeed we've gone further than that recently as well, in terms of what we look for example, in admission to membership and professional registration. We're starting to look now, among all the usual things, for some evidence of a demonstrable commitment to working on sustainability fire safety issues. So I've talked about knowledge a little bit in terms of trying to become a technical sort of centre of excellence on all of this. Something else that we're involved with the same objective, really, to improve knowledge and therefore drive the advantage for fire engineers to deal with some of these challenges. There's two examples there. So these are tangibles that are happening now. So you may well be aware of the International Decade of Action for Fire Safety, formed of a number of strands, or pillars as they're called, and IFE as a professional body, I think, quite logically is actually leading on the people pillar of that, so dealing with competence and behaviours and things of that nature, and of course a very, very large element of that whole competence agenda is around what we're talking about here now, in terms of understanding what's changing in the world and how we keep pace with it. So that's not just sustainability driven, of course, but it links very much to the theme of this presentation about understanding challenges and being able to respond to them. And also, as a member of the Fire Sector Federation, we are contributing technically to the working group that is in progress at the moment on mass timber frame construction, to hopefully get to a stage where IFE and others in the Federation can or will have produced a code of practice on the use of mass timber in construction. Just a brief one here about how we put all of that together as an organisation. So we've got an initiative, as is indicated there on the slide, IFE Cares. It's all about climate action, resilience, and sustainability. But the important bit really, it's not the title; it's the 3 steps. So step 1 is something that you would expect, I think, from any organisation, is that an organisation will look at itself in terms of the steps it can take in terms of minimising impact on the environment and sustainability and things of that nature. So that's all about corporate management, choice of suppliers and contractors and things like that. Steps 2 and 3, however, are pretty unique to professional bodies in fire at the moment, certainly the IFE. So I touched about earlier on the previous slide about what we expect from our members and what members should be doing in their professional practice, and particularly being able to demonstrate their understanding of sustainability, fire safety issues, the commitment to ethical conduct and behaviour, and in that sense, and also contributing to solutions as and when the opportunity arises. So we're certainly changing a bit of our expectations on members in response to where we are in the current situation with fire safety in sustainability sense. And then finally, the one there about what we want to really do is to become that centre of excellence regarding sustainability and fire safety. Now, that is a tall order. It's not something that we're going to be able to do overnight, because we, as has been said now a few times, no organisation can do this on its own. But as knowledge, understanding, research outcomes become visible, then we are very keen that we will become the sort of the hub for access and reference to those pieces of information that practitioners will need. Finally, just a little bit about the IFE. For those of you that are members, you may clearly be aware of this, but if you're not a member of the institution, then there's just a few elements there and a QR code that you can use to just find out a little bit more. But the reason that we've included this is not just a blatant plug for the institution. It's about that subheading there, our relevance to fire safety and sustainability. I think anybody at whatever stage of their career now in the fire services, or right through to fire safety, consultants, design engineers, fire risk assessors, wherever you're working in fire, there is an agenda now around sustainability. This presentation has only sort of scraped the surface, the tip of the iceberg with the whole thing. But we are relevant to that agenda, I think, is what I would like to say about the institution. A couple of key points. First of all, the international dimension. So IFE is not just a UK body, it's an international professional membership body, and we have just short of 12,000 members now all over the world, which is what the second point points to, in so much as that gives us a huge network that you can tap into if you're a member of the IFE to find out how others working in similar challenging situations as yourselves are coping, and what they're thinking and practices. And then finally, competency. I've said, we've put there on the slide the go-to body for competency. It's more than that, isn't it? The Institution of Fire Engineers is the only professional body that is licensed by the Engineering Council to professionally register individuals, and professional registration means we're attesting to people's competence. So it's not just a membership body, it's a professional body where members that are professionally registered and meet those standards, we can give society assurance that people are actually competent at what they do. I hope that's been of some use, and thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Hi, Steve. First of all, I'd like to extend our appreciation to yourself and the IFE for your support for Fire by Live. As a partner and a speaker, what drew you to Fire by Live?
Well, thank you for facilitating this for us. This is our second time, certainly the second time I've presented to Fire by Live. In answer to your question, it's your audience, really. So I think the Institution of Fire Engineers has a a core purpose, which is to sort of to facilitate awareness and to enable practitioners to understand the challenges that they face in their daily work, and then to be able to demonstrate that they're on top of their game effectively through membership and registration with us. So your audience, everybody that's been watching and hopefully listening to the presentation, not just mine but others, that's what's drawn us to Fire by Live.
Fantastic. As you said, a lot of our attendees and readership are fire chiefs and firefighters. So what does sustainability in fire mean for them and their firefighting approach?
Well, the illustration that I would use is the one that was in the presentation, actually. So if we think about that car fire on the side of the road there, I think my message to the NFCC and international fire chiefs as well would be, we've got operational capability that exists, and it's based on the way that things have been for quite some time, and of course that evolves. But my message would be to really consider the operational capabilities required in the next decade and beyond. Now, the answers to some of those, when we start considering it, are probably not visible at the moment. So my plea would be that the R&D agenda is facilitated from both sides, really. I think the National Fire Chiefs Council, fire chiefs, have an opportunity to start to articulate what they think their requirements might be for operational capability in the future, even if they can't visualize that yet in terms of tangible products for sale. And likewise, the supply side, through for example, the Fire Industries Association should really be able to engage with that sort of vision from the National Fire Chiefs Council, so that the research and development and product development can be focused exactly where it needs to be. And I think bringing those two things together is crucial to success here.
Well, thank you for your time, Steve. We really appreciate it. And if anybody has any further questions or ideas on how they can help and get involved, please do reach out to the IFE exhibitor booth. You can speak with Steve directly on the platform or another member of the IFE team. It's time to start this integration together. Thank you.